Welcome to another deep dive. Today we're heading to Sudan and going way beyond the headlines,
Yeah.
to explore the work that Sudanese civil society organizations are doing in the middle of this pretty terrible humanitarian crisis.
Right.
Really local heroes, I think we can call them.
Absolutely. It is a situation that's really easy to feel overwhelmed by.
Yeah.
You've got millions of people displaced healthcare systems that
Um,
are basically in ruins and diseases like cholera just spreading rapidly.
yeah, it's hard to even know where to begin with it all.
It is.
And it seems like while the big international organizations are, doing what they can,
Right.
it's really the local CSOs that are making the most immediate impact.
Absolutely. And I think one of the biggest things they have going for them is that inherent understanding with the local context.
Yeah.
The cultural nuances, the social dynamics,
Right.
the things that outsiders just often struggle to grasp.
Yeah. It's like they have this insider knowledge that just lets them navigate all the complexities of this crisis
Right.
with a level of agility and sensitivity that's really remarkable.
It is.
Take the emergency response rooms, for example.
Yes.
These grassroots initiatives uh, are often run by volunteers,
Mm-hmm.
and they're giving vital aid and information right there on the front lines.
Yeah, what's so fascinating to me about the ERRs is that they've really sprung up organically.
Mm-hmm.
They filled this void that was left by a healthcare system that's been basically decimated.
Right.
We're talking over 70% of health facilities
Wow.
in conflict zones are just not functioning.
That's just staggering.
Yeah.
It's hard to even imagine, the scale of the need.
Right.
But then you see these ERRs operating with, such resourcefulness, using whatever they can to give support.
Yeah,
It's truly inspiring.
it is.
But, I imagine they must be facing huge challenges as well.
Oh, absolutely. Funding is a major one.
Yeah.
Less than 10% of the aid that's been pledged by international donors has actually reached these local groups. It's a shockingly low number, and it really underscores the need for what we call localization.
Okay.
This idea of shifting the power and the resources from the big international NGOs to those that are working directly on the ground.
It makes perfect sense.
It does.
Empower the people who are closest to the problem
Right.
and already have the trust of their communities.
Exactly.
But if this idea of localization is so widely talked about, why aren't we seeing it happen more quickly?
Well, it's complicated.
Okay.
There are entrenched power dynamics within the aid sector.
Uh-huh.
Some international organizations, they're hesitant to give up control.
Mm.
And there's often just a lack of trust in the capacity of smaller local groups.
Yeah.
And then you add on top of that just the bureaucratic hurdles that can be overwhelming
Right.
for CSOs that are trying to access funding.
So it's not just about good intentions.
No.
There are these systemic barriers
Yeah.
that need to be dismantled if we want to see aid actually being delivered effectively.
Exactly. And the need to empower these local CSOs, it goes way beyond this immediate crisis.
Uh-huh.
It's about recognizing that they have a crucial role to play in building a sustainable future for Sudan.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
It's not just about providing aid today. It's about, getting these organizations ready to be that driving force
Mm-hmm.
behind Sudan's recovery and future development.
Right.
And we know that Sudanese CSOs are doing so much more than just delivering humanitarian aid.
Oh, for sure.
They're very involved in the fight for lasting peace.
Absolutely. They're not just passively waiting for peace to be, imposed from the outside.
Right.
They're actively trying to shape the future that they want to see.
Yeah.
For instance, you have the Framework for the Return to Civilian Political Path.
Okay.
This alliance of traditional leaders, Kufi orders, and political actors.
Wow.
They're pushing for a national conference and a civilian-led transitional government.
So we're really seeing these local CSOs working on multiple fronts here, from providing aid to, pushing for political solutions.
Yeah,
It seems like they really are at the heart of building a better future for Sudan.
they are.
But I imagine those peace-building efforts face their own set of challenges.
Of course, there's often polarization within civil society itself.
Okay.
You have different groups with different ideas about how to achieve peace.
Right.
And that can lead to competition for resources and influence.
Yeah.
Plus, it can be incredibly difficult for these local groups to engage international actors who might prefer working with, larger, more established NGOs.
So it sounds like there's this constant struggle
Yeah.
for legitimacy and recognition both internally and on the world stage.
Exactly, and that's something we need to be mindful of.
Yes.
Understanding these complexities helps us appreciate the challenges that these CSOs face,
Right.
and then identify where our support can be most effective.
And I think that's a key takeaway for our listeners today.
Absolutely.
It's not enough to simply be aware of the crisis in Sudan. We need to understand all the nuances and recognize that local actors are playing a key role in shaping their own future.
It's about moving beyond the headlines and really engaging with the deeper complexities of this issue.
Exactly, and that's what we're all about here on the Deep Dive. We want to empower you, the listener, to make those informed decisions and understand, the complexities of these global challenges.
And in this case, it's about understanding the incredible resilience
Yeah.
and resourcefulness of Sudanese civil society
Uh-huh.
and recognizing that they have the potential to lead the way towards a more peaceful and prosperous future.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
Now let's shift our focus to another critical aspect of Sudanese civil society, the diaspora.
Okay.
Often overlooked, they play a really unique and vital role in supporting the efforts we've been talking about today.
The Sudanese diaspora is really a global community. They're scattered across continents from North America and Europe to the Middle East and even beyond, each with their own stories and experiences, shaped by Sudan's really complex history.
It's fascinating to me how their journeys are so connected to the development of Sudanese civil society.
Right.
Many of these diaspora organizations were actually founded by activists and leaders who had to flee Sudan
Yes.
because of political repression or restrictions on their work.
And what's striking is they didn't give up on Sudan when they left.
Right.
They carried that passion with them, rebuilt their organizations in new countries,
Yeah.
and found really innovative ways to keep supporting people back home.
Yeah, they faced huge challenges starting over in new environments while still focused on making a difference in Sudan.
Absolutely.
It's incredible how they've adapted and thrived in those circumstances.
It is.
And their efforts have just intensified since this current conflict broke out.
Oh, absolutely. The diaspora's response has been multifaceted and incredibly impactful. They're mobilizing resources, raising awareness on a global scale,
Yeah.
and providing direct support to those affected by the conflict.
Yeah. It's like they're operating on two levels at the same time,
Right.
navigating their own lives in their new countries while also working tirelessly to support those back in Sudan.
Absolutely.
Can we kind of break down the different ways they're making a difference?
Sure.
I know we have formally registered CSOs initiated by the diaspora,
Yes.
and then we also have those organizations that had to flee Sudan after the conflict started.
Right. And that distinction is really important because those diaspora-initiated organizations, because they were already set up outside Sudan, they haven't experienced the same level of disruption as those who had to, uproot their entire operations.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
It must have been so difficult for those organizations.
But was.
Forced to flee, having to relocate staff, find new funding sources, and adapt their programs,
Right.
all while still operating in a conflict zone.
Yeah. The challenges are immense.
Yeah.
Just imagine having to rebuild your whole organization while facing restricted movement, damaged offices, and the constant threat of violence.
Yeah, and many of their staff members face this impossible choice of leaving loved ones behind
Right.
or risking their own safety to keep working.
It's a terrible situation.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking to even think about what they're going through.
It is.
But in the middle of all this, we also see these organizations showing just incredible resilience and adaptability.
Absolutely. They're finding ways to continue their work relocating to safer areas within Sudan, training activists to be on-call staff, and even embracing online and hybrid working models,
Wow.
despite power outages and, unreliable internet access.
It's amazing to see their determination to just keep going.
It is.
And it's not just about keeping their organizations going. They're actively changing their programming to meet the urgent needs of this crisis. So what are some of the specific ways their work has changed?
Well, there's a huge focus now on humanitarian and emergency response, providing aid and shelter to IDPs and refugees,
Okay.
offering training and income-generating activities, and doing awareness campaigns about gender-based violence.
So they're stepping in to fill those gaps where access for international organizations is limited.
Exactly. They're making sure that aid reaches those who need it most, even in areas where it's really difficult for others to operate.
But it's not all about immediate humanitarian assistance, is it?
No, it's not. Some diaspora organizations are also continuing their work outside of the emergency response area.
So what does that look like?
Well, for example, some groups are addressing really important things like combating hate speech.
Yeah.
They recognize how divisive rhetoric can fuel conflict.
Right.
Others are offering fellowships to young activists investing in future generations,
Hmm.
the ones who will be essential in shaping a peaceful and democratic Sudan.
That's such a good point. It's about addressing both the urgent needs of today
Yes,
and also laying the groundwork for a better tomorrow.
absolutely.
And they're doing all of this while they're dealing with their own lives and challenges in their new countries.
Hmm.
It's truly amazing.
It speaks to their deep commitment to Sudan and their belief that it can have a brighter future.
Now, we've talked about individual organizations,
Right,
but it's important to remember that the diaspora isn't a single entity.
right.
They're not all working in isolation.
No.
Many are working together and forming networks to have a bigger impact.
Absolutely. We're seeing a growing trend towards collaboration both within the diaspora and with local CSOs in Sudan.
Mm-hmm.
Some of these networks were already around before the conflict,
Okay.
while others have popped up as a direct response to the crisis.
So what's driving this move towards collaboration?
I think a big part of it is that they realize they can do more by working together.
Yeah.
They recognize that pooling resources, sharing information, and coordinating their efforts can lead to a much bigger impact than working alone.
Makes sense.
Plus, it creates a sense of solidarity and shared purpose,
Wow.
which is so important in times like these.
So can you give us some specific examples of how this collaboration is actually happening?
Sure, we see networks like the Female Journalists Network, which was already active before the conflict, now focusing on how to support women journalists working in Sudan
Okay.
who are facing, increased risks and censorship.
All right.
Then there's the Sudanese journalists in Egypt, a new group formed to help journalists who fled to Egypt for safety,
Okay.
to help them, navigate a new environment and continue their work.
That's great.
And then we also see networks of youth democracy activists,
Mm-hmm.
many of whom were involved in capacity building programs,
Okay.
now stepping up to engage in civic education and advocacy.
It's really encouraging to see this level of coordination and support within the diaspora.
It is.
But given Sudan's history of political differences,
Right.
are we seeing any of those divisions reflected in the diaspora?
That's a good question. Interestingly, right now, there's a real sense of unity within the diaspora
Okay.
that we didn't really see during the transitional period.
Yeah.
This overwhelming desire to end the war and help those who are suffering seems to have overcome many of the divisions from the past.
So this sense of urgency has really brought them together, at least for now.
Yes, but those underlying differences haven't completely vanished.
Right. Of course not.
Yeah.
So there are still those underlying tensions, especially when it comes to things like
Yeah.
what a future democratic government should look like, how to achieve peace,
Right.
and when to hold a constitutional conference.
These are really tough questions with no easy answers.
So the possibility of future division within the diaspora still exists.
Yes, especially as this conflict goes on and the stakes get higher.
Yeah, but what's encouraging is that many people in the diaspora know how dangerous division can be.
Right.
And they're really working hard to keep this unity going.
Absolutely. They understand that a divided diaspora won't be as effective in helping Sudan transition to peace and democracy.
It sounds like they're walking a tightrope,
Mm-hmm.
trying to navigate these internal differences while also presenting a united front.
Exactly. And that's a challenge they'll continue to face as the situation in Sudan changes.
But for now, the focus is on ending the violence and supporting those who are most affected. Now, we've talked about the international community and their role in providing aid,
Right.
but the diaspora is also a key source of funding and support.
Oh, absolutely. They contribute a lot, not only financially, but also by using their expertise, connections, and understanding of Sudanese society and politics
Yeah?
to advocate for change and support local initiatives.
But I imagine working with international organizations and figuring out the complexities of aid delivery can be tough even for diaspora organizations.
Yes, you're right. There can be a lot of frustration with bureaucracy delays in funding and a lack of transparency.
Yeah.
Building trust and communication is essential,
Yeah.
but it's not always easy.
And what about working with the Sudanese government?
Right.
That must be even more complex given the current political climate and security risks.
It's incredibly sensitive.
Hmm.
Diaspora organizations have to be really careful. There are concerns about corruption, the possibility of their work being misused or undermined, and even threats to their safety.
Wow.
So many prefer to work through local partners they trust
Right.
to make sure that aid gets to the people who need it without being diverted or put at risk.
So it sounds like working in this environment needs a really careful balance of idealism and practicality.
You got it. These organizations are driven by a deep desire to improve the lives of the Sudanese people,
Right.
but they also need to be smart, constantly assessing risks, adapting their strategies, and finding creative ways to make a difference in a really challenging and constantly changing environment.
It's inspiring to see their dedication.
It is.
We've painted this picture of these incredible local Sudanese CSOs doing such vital work,
Yeah.
and this vast network of diaspora organizations giving support and advocating from all over the world. Seems like such a powerful combination.
It is. And understanding the unique strengths and challenges of each group is really important if we want to find effective ways to support them.
We've covered a lot today: the humanitarian crisis, the peace-building initiatives, the role of both local CSOs and the diaspora. It's clear that Sudanese civil society is stepping up in incredible ways to deal with this multifaceted crisis.
And I think what ties all of this together is the urgent need for a new way of thinking about aid and development in conflict settings.
So moving beyond the traditional top-down approach.
Exactly. It's about embracing local ownership and leadership. It's about recognizing that the best solutions come from the inside.
Right.
It's about empowering the Sudanese people to rebuild their country the way they envision it.
That's a powerful idea.
Yeah.
And it brings us to the core of this deep dive.
Yeah.
We've been looking at the complexities of Sudanese civil society,
Yeah.
trying to understand their struggles and celebrate their incredible resilience.
Absolutely.
We've seen these local organizations step up to address the urgent needs of the crisis,
Yes.
providing aid, shelter, and essential services to people who've lost everything.
And we've also seen their commitment to peace,
Right.
launching initiatives to end the violence and build a more just and inclusive society.
And we've witnessed how important the diaspora is, giving support and advocating from all over the world, bridging the gap between Sudan and the international community.
It's been a really insightful journey, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But what stands out to you the most?
That's a good question. For me, it's remembering that even in the darkest of times, hope still exists.
Yeah.
Humanity shines its brightest when things are tough.
Mm-hmm.
And even though Sudan is facing huge challenges, the determination and resilience of its people gives me reason to believe in a brighter future.
I love that. It's a reminder that even in the face of unimaginable suffering,
Right.
the human spirit can endure and find ways to not just survive,
Yeah.
but to rebuild and create something better.
Exactly. It's about recognizing the agency and strength of the Sudanese people.
Yeah.
They're not just victims, they're actively working for change, shaping their own destiny.
Absolutely. And that brings us to our final thought-provoking question for you, our listener.
Okay.
What can you do to help these efforts? How can you use your voice, your resources, your connections to actually make a difference?
It's easy to feel overwhelmed by how big this crisis is.
Yeah.
But every act of solidarity matters. Even the smallest ones contribute to building a more just and peaceful world.
Whether it's donating to a good organization,
Right.
amplifying the voices of Sudanese activists, or even just learning more about the situation and telling others.
Yeah.
Every action makes a difference.
Don't underestimate the power you have to impact the lives of others.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into Sudanese civil society.
It was our pleasure.
We hope you've learned something new, felt inspired by the stories, and are ready to engage with this complex and important issue.
Yeah.
Until next time, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.